Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Guess what? This whole time I had my audio off. Can you hear me now? Alex? I can hear you. Are you able to hear me? Alex? I'm gonna check my audio. So this is what happens, guys. I know I'm testing. I hear everything sounds good on my end. Alex, are you able to hear me? You hear me? No, right? You want to come off and come back on, okay? I'm gonna send you a chat.
Here, can you hear me?
Oh, now I can. Woo! There it is. There we are. I got you. Can you hear me now? Yeah? I can hear you. Yes. You can't hear me. All right.
There we go. He's out.
Okay. Now you can hear me?
Hey,
how are you?
doing well. I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is I have to do one setting so we don't get echo. So give me 1 second. I'm going to do echo cancellation so that we don't get echo on your end.
I can try.
You sound good now. No, you sound good. Yeah, you sound good. So Alex, here's the crazy thing. I thought I was speaking and I was muted. So this whole time I was explaining how you were so generous when we did a podcast together and the audio did not come back good. It was all like very low, very muffled. And when I reached out to you and I said, can we try this again? And you were so generous and you said, absolutely. So you know what? Curtain call, right? Here we are again. We're doing it again. So I really appreciate your time. And, I think it's just going to be better this time around. What do you think?
Yeah, well, thank you. And yeah, it just shows that your commitment to good audio shows how much the effort and how much you care about the listeners. So
Yeah. So one of the things that I mentioned in our podcast last time we were on is that I really enjoyed we went dark again. So I think we cut out for a second. I said I was enjoying your bookshelves behind you.
Oh, yeah.
What was the inspiration behind them?
I needed a place to put my books.
But you could have put your books on the floor.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, big fan of the environment you're in, right? I think it defines a lot of, how you feel. And I work with books. And so to be surrounded by beautiful, beautiful books really makes me feel good. So.
Yeah, cool.
And I think I still owe you a copy, actually, of a certain book. So I'll make sure that gets in the mail this week.
Memory's coming back. So you didn't hit Alzheimer's.
No, I still remember that. I have the copy for you. It just hasn't been put in the mail yet. So my apologies for the delay.
No worries. I can't wait to, and we're going to talk about that book that you wrote as well. But you, at such an early age, you decided to do something because you fell in love with reading, but not right away, right? You didn't like to read. So let's get back into that. Let's talk about your childhood, if you don't mind, for a minute. And who would you say was your biggest inspiration for you to even pick up a book and get into it?
Yeah, I've always loved books. And from an early age, I would visit my grandfather's house up in Michigan when we'd come over for holidays from Australia.
Mm,
And his house would just be lined with books
nice.
from floor to ceiling. You know, the every single room in his house was just lined with books. And it was mainly fiction books is what he liked to read. And when he actually passed away, we ended up finding a lot of those books belonged to the library and were never returned. And so we found out there's a few overdue ones in there, but yeah, it just came from I just grew up surrounded by books, and then once I no longer was had to read them in high school, the books they recommend to you, I was that kid who was spark noting or trying to cheat on all of those and get away with not reading the book. As long as I wasn't forced to, as soon as I wasn't forced to read the book, I actually started to read books and enjoy them, which started with one of our, I think, probably mutual favorite ones, which is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh yeah, definitely a great book. Great book.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because I was gonna be talking to a bunch of people, and somebody said, make sure you mention that book to them. And I'm like, why? Because the people you're talking to, they need to learn how to communicate better and how to be friendlier and how to, make people like them. And I'm like, yeah, good point. Good point.
That is, yeah, it's like the first step, right?
Yeah. And so, and I like the fact that you talked about the cliff notes, right? Because how many people would hope that a lot more books had cliff notes? And I'm not talking about books that, certain books when you get to high school have cliff notes, but I don't remember elementary schools books having cliff notes, or even junior high school books having. It's just when you get to high school when things get a little bit more crazy, right? Because it's all of a sudden you have like 5 hours of homework, and you have all this stuff that's going on. Is like, I need the cliff notes on this stuff. And even sometimes when people are talking and they're so boring, you're like, can you give me the cliff notes?
Exactly.
So, wow, that must have been some experience. And then finding out that your grandfather had all these cool books, but they weren't necessarily his.
No.
That's kind of
Yeah,
funny, right?
it's not they didn't have the money to buy the books. He's a farmer, and the farm made
Right.
enough money to for him to be able to buy the books. But hey, anyway, yeah, it was funny. As I don't think they were at the library. I think these were overdue library books from like the 1970s, 1980s. So I don't think anyone was coming for them.
Right. But that's kind of funny because, it's, and that's one of the things that I think you and I talked about last time, is that libraries now are so empty, and there are so many valuable books there that we can all go and read. And even when we talk about mentoring and coaching and all that stuff, you can find a mentor for $20, or you can go to the library and it costs you nothing. You just got to get a library card, and you can learn so much
Yeah.
just by going to the library. And the library is a great resource for so many different things.
Oh yeah. My sister and I both grew up with library cards, and it was a weekly event that we would go to the library.
It's funny when my kids were old enough, and I'm divorced, and so I said to my kids, I said, okay, let's go to the library. And they were like, library? I'm like, yeah, the one by your house. Like, oh, okay. So I guess mom didn't take them. So I made it more fun for them. And I said, okay, we're getting library cards, and we're going to go to different libraries, because the one that we were able to get allowed them to go to the library by my house. It allowed them to go to the library by their house.
Yeah.
It allowed them to go to other libraries. So every so often I would take them to different libraries, and they would get lost, and they're like, Dad, can I go over here? Can I go over there? I go, absolutely. And it was like, at first they were like, can we go now? And all of a sudden, when they started finding these adventures in the library, now they were like, yeah, can we go to the library?
That's
And
awesome.
that was, to me, that was awesome. As a dad, as
Mm.
someone trying to instill values in their kids, that was huge. And a lot of libraries, and even today, I've taught at libraries. I've taught Tai Chi at libraries. There's courses you can take at libraries. So there's so much resources at a library
Oh
that
my goodness. Yeah.
we forget
Oh
they're
yeah.
there. And guess
Oh,
who pays for the libraries? We do.
yeah. It's like you're already paying for them. Yeah.
You might as well use it, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about, how did you get your book into colleges? And not your books, but yeah, no, actually, it was your book, right? Into so many different colleges. And you have all these ideas, these concepts, but you made it come to fruition. What was the idea? Who was behind it? Was it you, your friends? I know you guys all collaborated. Tell us that. That's a really interesting story.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. It was a good friend of mine, Rashad Kanal, who's actually a war refugee from Nepal. They like his bathroom, when he grew up was like a hole in the ground. And so you talk about, someone coming to the U.S. to live the American dream. It was him, and I still am inspired by him every single day. But we started a podcast, because I think I was 20 at the time. He was 20 at the time. And we thought, well, what do we have to offer the world at that age? And it was like, well, what do we know so far? And it was interviewing for big tech companies. So we had gotten interviews with the likes of Google and Microsoft and a couple other big tech companies. And so we thought, okay, well, let's teach other college kids how to, basically become young professionals, which is funny because now I hate the concept of professionalism. And back then the business school funneled everyone into consulting. I think consulting is a place where a lot of young, bright minds go to die, but that's a topic for a different day. But, at the time, that was what we knew. That was what we were good at. And that's how we thought we could contribute. And so we started a podcast. It was called Practically Passionate. And we just interviewed. At first, we talked about what we knew. And then when we ran out of what we knew, we brought on people who knew more than us. So we started talking to them. And then, we grew to, pretty substantial size for, two guys starting a podcast out of their dorm rooms, pretty much. Grew it to, I think at our peak, it was like, for us, we were very proud of this, like 200, 300 weekly listeners, which for us, we were so proud of that. And so we thought, okay, well, what's next? And we attended, one of our friends, mentors said we should go to this seminar in Tyson's Corner. And so we did. And it was this real salesy guy who was basically like it was a bit gimmicky. I don't know that it was all that ethical, but there was one takeaway we got from that event. And it was, this guy had a book and he was able to do so much with that book I don't think it was necessarily for the right reasons, but we turned to each other and we said, okay, what's next? Let's write a book. Right. And so then we turned the podcast pretty much into a book. And we thought we had made it. We hired a Amazon consultant to do a bestsellers launch, and we hit number 1 in like 11 Amazon categories, which now I know means nothing.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing. Wow.
Whenever anyone tells you they're an Amazon bestseller, it really doesn't mean that much. Just being honest. It depends. There are categories that are worthwhile being in. But there are over 14,000 categories on Amazon. And I mean, there are some super specific, obscure categories, like, I don't know, camping barefoot. I wouldn't even be surprised if that was a category of book on Amazon. There is not much competition for a book in that category, right? You might be one of 3 books. And so if you literally have 10 of your friends buy a book on the same day, that will be enough to get you the Amazon bestseller status. We didn't know that. We paid a consultant, I think it was $4,000 to get us to hit this Amazon bestseller list. Right. And all she did was get a few people to buy the book and put us in the right categories, and we were Amazon bestsellers. Now we didn't know that. We thought we had made it. We thought that our book had, we were going to be millionaires. We thought we were going to have this huge impact. Huh. And we noticed a few weeks later, the book it wasn't even selling a copy a day. And it's like, how could this book that was supposedly doing so well be selling nothing? And it's because there was never any organic, real traffic as a result of our marketing efforts, which was pretty much nothing. It was hiring this lady who did this bestseller launch. And so what we turned around and again, the caveat, there are categories on Amazon that you do have to sell thousands of copies a day to hit #1 in those categories. So don't think that just because you just do your research into what categories, it's more important what categories that they're actually saying they're a bestseller in. And you can look at bestseller rank on a product, on a book at any time. But essentially, we realized, okay, no one was buying our book. And so we needed to get creative. And so the book pretty much sat with just a few sales, thanks to my mom, my grandma, my cousins, for about 6 months, until we devised this plan to reach out to universities. We're like, okay, we went after a market that doesn't have money to spend on a career guide. They get that for free at their university, right? And so we ended up reaching out. We're like, okay, who does have money to spend on something like this? We're like, well, colleges. And so we reached out to the career. We made a list. I sat in a coffee shop every weekend for like 2 months while I still worked for someone else, and emailed the career services director at each of these universities, basically saying, "Hey, we're an Amazon bestseller," which you and I now know what that means, but they didn't know what it meant. And I
got to stop you for a second. I had no idea. You just like blew everything out of my mind just now, because almost everyone says they have an Amazon number.
Now you know why.
Now I know why. So that means that I can write a book right now. And if I get my mom, I'm sorry, my mom passed away, but maybe if she, under her name, I can buy a book, right? So I can get a bunch of friends, maybe 10, 15, 20 to buy it, and I am a bestseller.
Yeah. If you're in the right category, yeah. Now for some, it's, obviously, and some people will even put themselves in the wrong category. I've seen this happen a lot, they'll put them, because Amazon has they don't actually verify that you should be in a category. So there's like a lot of romance fiction authors who will put their books in like books about, keyboards and computers on Amazon, because those books don't sell a lot and they're super easy to hit #1 in those categories. And so then those authors can say, "Hey, I'm a bestseller." And it's absurd. And there are categories like digital marketing on all of Amazon. You're going to have to sell 1,000 copies a day to hit that category. So again, there are some books that are substantial, but also something I pay attention to is it a bestseller over time? Does that book currently have the bestseller status, or did it just hit it for a day? That's something that you can kind of, you can see if it's been gamed or if it really is a bestseller like people say it is. But yeah, Rafael, you could write a best-selling book tomorrow if you wanted to.
What do you mean? I already did. It's on Amazon. I'm just kidding.
There you go.
So tell me about the colleges. You're there sitting, you're writing all these people. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we reached out to all these universities, including like Yale and some of these colleges that we had no business pitching to. But that was one that we got a response from Yale, and it like made my day. I was like, even the fact that they had just entertained the idea,
right?
And then I think they figured out like, wait a second, these guys I don't know, something's not right here. Everything was right. We're good guys trying to help people, but we didn't know the bestseller status at that point was that easy to obtain. That's kind of one of those truths that you just don't want to believe. So we ended up getting 11 colleges to agree to distribute our book. So Kansas State outright bought, I think it was 300 copies of the book, which was awesome at cost though. They weren't going to pay, premium price. They were going to pay as much as it cost us to print it, which we were still super happy with, right? That's 100 students who are going to have a copy of your book. But then the rest of them all said, well, we'll send out, your PDF to our college kids, to our students. And so the reach ended up being around 40,000 students who were going to receive at least a virtual copy of our book. So then we turned around and we sold, we thought, okay, well, we haven't made any money on this, but we have an audience of 40,000 students. So how can we monetize this? And so we turned around and sold ad spots in the book for $1,000 a page. And so we had like Kohl's, like the department store, paid us $1,000 for an ad placement in the book. And they would link to applications for summer internships, and job applications, because we thought, okay, well, we have 40,000 students. Who wants to get in front of them? People who want to hire them. And so we ended up making, I think it was somewhere between like $8,000-$10,000 just from selling ad spaces in the book. And that was kind of my first little introduction into, small time entrepreneurship. But that's the college story.
Wow, that's pretty clever when you think about it, to put an ad in a book. And how many books have you ever, to get somebody to pay for it? So you got 8 people to say, yeah, we like this book, and the fact that college students are going to hold on to it, and the fact that they were recruiting them, right? Did you guys reach out to the Marines? I'm sure they would have paid you easily, right?
The only issue with that is any government institution moves so slowly, so it probably would have taken 3 years of red tape and 100 signatures to probably get a sign off on that.
Right. Alex, I send you a private chat because I wanna let people know how to connect with you. So if you can just send me back some of your links or whatever, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, when you did this book, right? You wrote the book with your friend, right? You got it out. You had some success because you did not stay complacent or at the status quo, or you realize that, hey, somebody just swindled us out of 4 grand, right? If you think about it, because they promised you, but maybe they were just using witchcraft, if you will, right? and but you didn't get mad. You actually decided, okay, how can we make a bad situation better? How can we improve upon it? And then you figured out how to do it. You figured out, we got to reach out. Who's going to want our book, right? Students, right? And even some of those universities that said, yeah, send us your book, they weren't going to pay you. They wanted you just to send it to them, right, for free. And you did that, right?
Yep. Yeah.
How many of those did you send out?
Like how many copies got sent, or how many emails, or how many copies got sent out?
How many free copies did you send out?
Oh, over 40,000. Because that's they sent it out to their email lists of students. So yeah.
So 40,000. You made, was it $8,000 after you paid for the books?
Yeah. So we didn't, because it was a PDF, we didn't have to pay for the books. So it was just a free copy of the book. So it was just 8,000 pure profit, other than the time we spent on phone calls with administrators at these universities.
Okay. All right. So it's not an actual physical book.
No, yeah, except for Kansas State, who bought the 300 copies outright, and they just paid for the cost of basically shipping and cost of the book itself. But the rest were all just virtual versions of the book.
Okay, cool. And I'm glad that you touched upon that, because a lot of people can do that, right? So they can do a PDF and try to. Now, would it be fair to send out a PDF with half of the book and then say, to read the rest, sign up here, pay for the rest of it here?
I guess.
Would that be okay? Not really, right? That would be like kind of sneaky snake salesman, right?
Well, if you're promising the whole book, you should probably send the whole book. But if you promise half the book, then yeah, you can send half the book. I'm sure that'd be just fine. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I just put your link up for people to connect with you. When we think about books, right? And I love this about you, that you talk about. By the way, your Facebook just says facebook.com. I'm going to click on it, see if it takes me to you.
Well, that's not very useful.
No, that took me to me. So you'll adjust that.
Yeah, there you go.
I appreciate that, buddy. So thinking about when we do our due diligence, if we say we want to write a book, and we go ahead and write a book, now we are looking to promote the book. We are looking to find a way to do it. How do we avoid the people that you encountered? How do
Yeah.
we know who's real?
Pay attention to the people who have done it. So I like to say, never trust someone who doesn't walk with a limp. And that's,
Yes.
like if someone hasn't been doing, like if you are hiring someone who either doesn't closely work with the people who are successful or is successful themselves,
Right.
then like you should be asking, okay, like for anyone who's trying to help you with publishing services, you should be like, who are your past clients? You should be going to those clients' books and seeing, okay, what are the results these books have? And if they're not the results you're looking for, well, then it's not something that, and that you should be investing in. So basically just do your due diligence of asking who are your past clients and do your research into how successful those clients have been.
Nice. So,
or the author themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So what made you decide to start helping people understand the process of even getting noticed, right? And Amazon and all these
Yeah.
different, what propelled you to say, you know what? I kind of got swindled, right? I'm a number one seller.
Yeah.
Am I, right?
Yeah.
Am I? And what category was that?
Yeah.
And then you said, how do I, why did you choose to go ahead and help people and be real with them and be honest?
Yeah. I think it's because I can. I think that's a great place is when you run a business where you don't need clients. Obviously you always start off, okay, what is something I can do to help someone, right? When you're starting out in your entrepreneurial journey, it's always difficult to bring value. And that's where it just comes from education. I could sit here and we could talk for 20 hours about anything book marketing because I literally spent for a year, I would listen to the Self-Publishing School podcast by Chandler Bolt,
Great.
for an hour a day. And I would just learn about how Robert Kiyosaki sold his books, how Mike Michalowicz sold his books, right? And so I just learned about, marketing strategy just from, learning from the greats. And then I start interviewing them myself to ask questions I didn't get answers to by listening to these other podcasts. And so it just came from a love of books and being willing to put in the hours to learn this stuff. Amazon ads specifically back in 2018, which is when we released our book, Amazon ads was a very different landscape. Things were a lot cheaper. So we threw a bunch of ads out and we had some pretty good success, with them. So we were selling maybe 100 copies a month, which was, better than the, mom, dad, cousin buying the books, right? And so I had, some other small time authors take notice. They were like, oh, well, can you help me with my, book ads too? And so we jump on and help them with their ads. And then, it just kind of grows from there. You get better and better, clients introduce you to other clients. And for 2 years, we've pretty much grown entirely from referral marketing. We never had to do any outbound marketing just because we just kept getting referred to people. And so when you start to do something over and over again, you get obviously much better at it. And now I think we're probably the world's leaders in, doing Amazon advertising for nonfiction books. I genuinely believe there isn't anyone out there who's better at it than we are.
Wow, that's incredible. And I mean, is that how you started landing some big names?
Yeah, that and connections. To really step up to the next plate, because once you get in the room with the big guys, they all know each other. And if you can just get in with one of them, they'll start to promote you to other people. And so I think the podcasting is great for that, right? Because it's your way to kind of start getting introduced to people.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you also have to provide value to them, right? Like you actually have to get them a return and see them through to success. And then honestly, you probably don't even need to ask. They'll probably just refer you to other people. But even just having like that one big name, then you can take that one big name and then include that in, maybe you start cold emailing all the other top holders and you say, well, I've worked with this guy. Here's a video of him saying we did a great job. Are you interested in talking? And that's worked really well for us too. So.
Yeah. So you have Michael Michalowicz on your website.
Yep.
Love his books. Gosh. And the fact that he's promoting you, holy cow, that's huge, right?
Oh, it's gotten us in so many doors. He ends up, and it's funny how marketing works. He's really good friends with a guy named Alan Dibb, who wrote the one-page marketing plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Alan and Mike are good friends. And, we don't want to ask Mike for any favors because he's already done us a favor by making us that video. That was very kind of him.
Right.
And so obviously, we were successful with this book, but, it was very kind of him to make us that video. And so then we send, we send an email to Alan Dibb, who we know is friends with Mike, and say, hey, this is what we've done with Mike's book. Here's a video he made for us. Would you be interested in, in talking? And then, he's like, yeah, let's have a conversation, comes on the podcast. And, before long, he's now a client of ours. And so it's just kind of like, just get one big name and then start leveraging that big name, serve them really well, and then, leverage that in other places. So
let's go back to what you just said. Serve them really well. Right. Now, that person that you dealt with in the beginning, when you were getting your book, they didn't serve you well at all. But so when we talk about over delivering, right? Is that what you mean by serving them well?
Yeah. Or even you'd be surprised how many people don't even just deliver on what they promise. It's like, at least at a minimum, deliver on what you promise, and then yeah, deliver more than that as well if you can. But because there's so many people out there who don't give it to you straight, or don't set expectations well,
Right.
Or don't say like, okay, well, what is it you actually think you're going to achieve by working with us? Well, if what they think they're going to achieve doesn't line up with the results you can provide, it's probably not a deal you should take on, right? And it's like, I was having a conversation before this with an author where he's like, oh, I'm going to become a best-selling author, because of your Amazon ads. And I mean a real best-selling author, not just an Amazon best-selling author. He's like, oh, I'm going to sell 100 copies a day or something. I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, you have 50 reviews on your book. You're not doing anything else to promote your book. Like, that's just not going to happen with your Amazon ads. And so even if you just set expectations right, anyway, that's my little tangent. I think honestly, the bar is so low for people delivering on what they promise nowadays that if you just deliver at least on what your promise is a bare minimum, you'll be good to go. But yeah.
But somebody else might have said, oh yeah, you're going to do it, right? But you're being honest with them, and you're coming forth with the reality, the truth, right?
Yeah.
What does somebody do when they come to you and they're like, I only have, maybe I've already written my book, it's already on Amazon, and I'm a bestseller.
Happens every day.
But I'm only selling like 12 books a month.
Yeah.
How do I ump that up? What are you going to do for me? How are you going to help us? Because I've tried everything else and I hear you guys are the best. So now I'm coming to the best. I'm coming to Alex.
Yeah.
Alex, what can you do for us?
Well, the great news is everyone who hops on a call with me at least learns something or a better way to market their book, just because I've gone so deep into my industry, which is book marketing, where yes, the main offering we have is doing Amazon ads, right? That is our main thing. We do a couple other things too, but that's more so for people who are already clients, and that's just ways we really know we can help them.
Right.
So when I hop on a call with anyone, I'm going to walk you through, what is your strategy? What did you actually hope to accomplish with this book? Are you trying to drive clients? Is a reader of your book going to turn into a $100,000 client? Well, then you shouldn't care about making a return on your book. You should care about, okay, what is that client going to be worth to you, and how are you actually going to bring them in a way where you're going to nurture them, build that relationship where they end up buying from you, right? So it's just looking at, I'm not just going to take you on. I'm going to ask you, what is it you're looking to accomplish with your book? What are you currently doing? And then, okay, like, what is the next rung of the ladder that you need to be reaching to, right? Because someone like Mike Michalowicz, his next step is a little bit different than an indie author who just released their first, business book about, systems, and maybe has, 20 people who have bought their book. They have a different game plan. Their next rung of that ladder that they're climbing is going to be a bit lower than, and they need to be okay with that. They need to, like, there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's always going to be work that you need to put in. So,
I recently finished his Get Different book.
Yeah.
And great book.
Yeah.
How fast, because of his previous successes, how fast did he like really jump into selling that book, at a high volume compared to his other books?
I actually don't know. So we didn't work on Get Different specifically.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, that's not one of the titles that we advertise. But when Mike first released, I believe it was Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. It was that or Pumpkin something. He he had self-published this back in maybe the 1990s or actually maybe even late 80s, where to put out a book, you pretty much had to order, like self-publishing was so it was vanity publishing, right? Yeah. And it was expensive. He had to spend like 20 grand to get these, books printed, and they sat in his garage and he didn't sell any. And so he's like, well, crap, like, okay, I have this inventory in my garage. I need to sell these books. And so he started reaching out to university students of organizations he was a part of and having them email the university to bring him in as a guest speaker. And so, which is just like, genius. Instead of reaching out to the university and saying, hey, can I come speak? It was like, he reached out to these students. He literally sent them the template of the email to send to their administrators to bring him on campus. That's so they have, like, he's basically, he's doing the work for them, because we all know college kids are busy, or, they're busy doing other things, right? And so he basically just set it up so that, what was the bare minimum, right? Like, he wasn't a requested speaker. These college kids didn't know who he was. Okay, well, what can I do to get in front of an audience? And so then obviously he'd get to these events, he'd give away a few copies. Those kids would take that book home with them on spring break or whatever. And this is more specifically with Profit First. He used the same strategy. He would take that book home, or the students would take that book home, and it was the students' moms were picking up this book named Profit First. And it's his best-selling book, has over 6,000 reviews on Amazon. Profit First, initially, actually the captured audience, his micro audience starting out, was moms. Because moms would pick up these books that students were bringing home because of these events he was hosting on campus. And they were picking up this book and absolutely loving it. And word was spreading like wildfire, because all these entrepreneurial moms sitting at home were loving his book. And so through that, he ended up building his initial following, which then carried him to the rest, right? Once you have that initial following of, people who buy your book, that's what you're trying to do, is get that initial core audience, and then that audience will carry you to the rest. So that's a little bit longer of an answer than you're looking for, but that's how Mike Michalowicz initially started to sell copies of his book. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. And so which book did you guys help him put together? It was a kid's book, right?
Yep. So we worked on My Money Bunnies, which is a audience he has never gone after before. He's not a children's fiction author, but we usually don't work with fiction books, but we were able to take him on because of the fact that people who are searching for these topics, a lot of them are of the age where they probably have, kids. And if we're targeting, money habits, a parent who's learning about money habits is probably going to be like, well, I don't want to have my kids, have the same issue, so I should also buy a book for my kid, right? It's like targeting the same audience, but like with a kid's book, it's like if they're a self-starter or they're a learner themselves, they're going to promote that, or they're going to want to get that book for their kids as well. So it was great, because although it was a fiction children's book, we were able to advertise it in pretty much the similar way that we advertise any nonfiction book. So,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so we worked on that one, and then we worked on a book called Fix This Next, which we're actually we have ads up and running for that one as well, starting this month too. And his goal with that one is to drive business into the back end of the book. But those are the two titles that we worked on for him. So
that's pretty cool. So when you take on a new client, right? Let's say that they agree to do the work that you said, we're going to do it this way, right?
Yeah.
Because they've tried their way, it didn't work, right? So now, how diligent and how often do the ads come out, and where are they placed, if you don't mind saying that?
So for the beginning part, are you talking about for authors that we start running ads for, where are those ads getting placed?
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially there's two places to have Amazon ads on Amazon, and that's product searches and product pages. So for people who are going onto Amazon and typing in, whatever it is that your book is about, you want to be showing up in front of them. And that's all, well and great. That's one of the main places. But a lot of the people don't go to Amazon just to aimlessly, type something in and hope that there's a good book. That's usually not the reader habit. Usually you hear about a really good book from a friend, right? Yep. Rafael here talked about, and I talked about how to win friends and influence people at the beginning of the book, right? So maybe at the beginning of the podcast, live stream, however you're listening. And so you heard that book and you're like, well, I should go check out that book. I'm going to go to Amazon. I'm going to look for how to win friends and influence people, and I'm going to buy that book, right? Mm-hmm. And so the second place is to advertise to that person who is going to that product page. So you want your ads showing up on the book pages of other authors that are similar to yours. So that's pretty much the two main places, product pages and customer searches. Those are the main places that you can have your ads displayed.
And when somebody types in, even on Google, will that, let's say they put up a name that, and I do it when I'm looking for something, and I don't necessarily go to Amazon, but all of a sudden all the Amazon ads pop out. Is that somewhere else where somebody can, like, you put an author's name and then all of a sudden the book pops up an Amazon ad?
Yeah, so that is minimum ad spend is like $10,000 a month for those kinds of ads. And that's where Amazon buys ad spots on like the New York Times or like the Wall Street Journal. And then they display specific books. Authors pay for those spaces. And usually it's top authors, ones that are backed by publishers with lots and lots of money to blow on their marketing. That's not what the average author is doing with their Amazon ads. They're usually just trying to be more specific. But so for the average author, that's not where their ads are going to be displayed. Their ads are only going to be displayed specifically on Amazon.com. But for traditionally published authors who have a lot of funding and they can afford a $10,000 a month minimum, then yeah, you might end up on the New York Times through your ads or something like that. So
Gotcha. So when we think about all the authors that are out there, do we have enough?
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't think so. I think that everyone out there, whether they publish the book or not, should write a book. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's no harm in that at all. I think that my concern is you don't. I published my book, Book Funnels and Amazon Ads, for $200. I paid an editor. Literally, that was the only thing I spent money on, was an editor. She gave me a great rate. I did the cover. I did everything else. So first of all, if you want a book out there, just as like that's always been a life goal, dream of yours, absolutely write a freaking book. For a book that is going to sell really well, you need to, as one of my mentors says, Bill Gladstone, he's the literary agent to people like Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle, right? These big name authors. If you spend 1,000 hours writing a book, you need to spend 1,000 hours marketing your book. You don't just have the right expectations, because the worst thing is when people are sold these big dreams of authorship that their book's going to sell 1 million copies, and
it doesn't.
It very well may, but then you need to spend as much time thinking about how you're going to market the book. So as long as you go in with the right reasons for writing a book, then I think everyone, absolutely write a book. But don't get your hopes up if you're not going to put in the work to market the book. That was why I was a little bit hesitant there to start off with.
No, I appreciate that, because you know what? Yeah, there's one of the things that I've said a couple of times, and I might have heard it from someone. So if I'm not trying to take somebody's credit, but I know I heard it. So the cemetery is full of dead dreams, right? People who should have, could have, but didn't.
Oh yeah.
And so for anybody out there who's listening, definitely write your book. Even if you never publish it, even if you just share it as a PDF, it's worth your time, right? Because you are living a life that's hopefully worth living, or a life that's been crazy, and some people will never believe you when you put it down in writing, right? So what do you say, and I know you sell nonfiction, right? What do you say the best type of books out there that get better reviews or better, better market share?
Yeah.
What types of books?
Well, first of all, going back to your statement, I wish my grandfather had written. I wish both of my grandfathers. Oh my goodness, I would read their books in a heartbeat. So yeah, going back to maybe for future generations, just getting to learn about the thoughts that went in their head and the life that they lived. That would be so. I'd never thought of that before. So you're absolutely right. I think even just for your lineage, I think that's a very cool thing.
Wow.
Here is my answer to your question. There's a book called where is it? I think it's going to be at the top here. There's a book called Write Useful Books. It's by Rob Fitzpatrick. I don't see it on my shelf right here, but I know it's here somewhere.
Desk, maybe you're reading it.
Yeah, no, actually, maybe no, that's not here. So yeah, Rob Fitzpatrick, and he actually breaks down for nonfiction authors the exact, like how, and he's again going back to like he wrote a book called The Mom Test, which has over 1,000 reviews on Amazon. It's sold. He's personally made hundreds of thousands of dollars from this book.
Really?
The book does like $10,000-$20,000 in revenue per month.
Mm.
So this is again going back to learning from someone. He was a self-published author. He didn't have a brand name before that, and he wrote this book called The Mom Test. It did incredibly well, and so then he released the second book, which is Write Useful Books. And I think it is the best testament to what needs to go into a nonfiction book that is based on like how to, right? Because there's nonfiction books like, Nelson Mandela's biography is not the same type of nonfiction as like, how to build your business, right? Those are two types of nonfiction books. But for like prescriptive nonfiction, meaning these are things that solve problems for you, there's a couple things that need to go into it. One, you need to have done it. One of the key components to making a nonfiction books that is going to sell well over time is you need to have taught people the subject matter that you're actually writing about. And it's not a matter of like people are going to know if you haven't told people, or it's just a matter of when you teach people something, you are able to review that information so many times that you start to be able to simplify it at its most fundamental level, which can be profound and very educational for someone who needs to learn that topic. And so it's just a matter of if you've taught something over and over again, you are able to explain it to people in a way that they're going to understand because you've done that over and over again. So that's the first thing, is it needs to be a topic that you really are you have taught a lot of people about that topic. That's really, and maybe, you're just like the self-help person in your friend group, right? If you've taught your friends how to improve their lives and you've seen them be able to do it, you've seen, their lives get better, that's enough, right? Like, you have, that's already better than if you're just like, I'm going to write a self-help book, but you've never helped anyone, like, good luck. So that's the first thing, is it just like, it needs to be a book of practice, right? And so this next thing I would say is it needs to be, there's like little tips, you can include throughout, like, I don't know which book it is, but The Morning Miracle, I think is the name of it, by Hal Elrod. There's things like he has an accountability partner, part of the book. The whole book is basically have a better routine in the morning. He has an accountability portion where he says, if you reach out, this isn't going to work for you unless you have someone who you do it with. And so that's perfect, because for him, it means someone who reads his book is going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to go get my friend in on this. And he says, I'll send them a free copy of the book, in exchange for their email or something. And so, through that, you're starting to build that, the readership, people hearing about the book. For everyone who picks up your book, you're doubling your impact, right? If they go out and get, someone to do the course with them. There's other things like if you mention the name of your book throughout the book, people are going to know, like, oh, well, Rafael, what are you reading right now? You're like, oh, I can't remember the title. Well, if you repeat it throughout the book, and obviously, it needs to be in a way that is, makes sense in the material, but people are going to remember it more, right? So there's like little things like that, but that's never make a best-selling book. So the main thing is just like practicing the practice of the book, not over-explaining things too much. Like there's the, Rob Fitzpatrick says there's like the educator's curse, or the expert's curse, which is basically, a topic so well that when you explain it to someone else, they're like, what language are you speaking? Because you're just so technical and so in the weeds. So that's another part of it. Again, you overcome that by teaching people about it. So these are just a few of the ways that you can make sure that you're writing a book that's actually going to actually be useful.
No, I love the way you put that together, because, for me, I also teach martial arts, and a lot of masters who've been teaching, I've been teaching, oh my gosh, almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like, I don't want to teach the beginners anymore. And I'm like, why? To me, I love teaching beginners. Why? Because I get to be their first, I guess, introduction to this beautiful art that I teach. And I want them to have a good first impression of the art.
Yeah.
Because if we allow someone who is not gifted at teaching them, they're not going to have that moment of saying, "Wow, I want more." Right?
It's a
So
great point. Good for you.
right,
Yeah.
but I love teaching beginners because it's that first impression, right? And it's also how important is it for a writer to even have that first impression on a person when they read their first paragraph or their first page? Because if you're down chapter, or you're down, the first part of the book, and you're in 10 pages and you're like, oh my God, is this book almost over? Then it's like you didn't capture them if you're leaving all the good stuff for later on, right? It's almost like even a movie. If like some movies start with the end in mind, right? They'll show somebody dead, and then they explain how they got killed, right? So when we think about marketing, right, and that's what you're obviously you're gifted because you're world known now. What is the first thing that you want people to understand about the way you're going to help them attain that end in mind, that subscription, if you will, to people following them?
I'm going to give them a dose of reality. They're going to hear what they don't want to hear. That's probably the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because people, they lie to themselves all the time, don't they?
Yeah. But it's easy to do. It's also because you think, oh, well, here's this person who, like Mark Zuckerberg, right? Well, okay, well, that's not a good example of what I'm going for. But essentially, like we all think of these people, and you hear this all over that, like, no one's an overnight success. It's a 10-year overnight success, right? And so people want all the glory, but they don't understand that, like, there's going to be a hell of a lot of struggle in between. And obviously, there's use cases where, people do, it is quicker than others, right? One of my favorite authors, Dory Clark, she wrote a book called The Long Game, which is all about, like, she tells her clients, like, you are not going to see results in your life for 2 to 3 years. Like holy cow, like, talk about being honest. I mean, and it really is true. Like, no matter what you do, like, you have to, but set yourself up in a way that you can't fail with it, right? Like, for example, like or that you're going to stick to it over long term. And that's one of Alan Dibb's favorite things to say is, like, don't do random acts of marketing. Random acts of marketing don't work. And it's because, like, you need to systematize. So, like, I have a podcast that's called Before the Bestseller, and you need to have a way that you're going to continue to put out that podcast week over week, even when you're only having 3 or 4 listeners, right? Because it sucks, right? Like in those early days, you're like, how am I going to grow this podcast? And it's like the one thing that is consistent among everyone who is successful is consistency.
Oh yeah.
And that is just doing it week over week. And so, like, for example, like every podcast episode I record 2 episodes in one. And so that way I know that, I don't just, for every episode I put out, I'm like, oh, I record a podcast in a week, I'm only 1 more week out. For every 2 podcasts, for every podcast I record, I now have 2 weeks of content. And so it's a lot easier to scale my time. And we already have podcasts recorded up until December, because I know that if I'm just putting out a podcast a week and recording a podcast a week, I'm not going to stick through it through the months where there's, really horrible listeners, right? So, like, set yourself up ways where, and Rafael, I mean, you're a man of consistency yourself. So, all this stuff. I mean, what's worked for you in terms of consistency?
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. When I started my podcast, I was going to do one a week.
Yeah.
And I got so many people to say yes to me, because that's the whole thing, right? We have to ask. If you will never get a yes unless you ask. So I got so many people saying yes, they want to be on my show. So then I said, okay, I'm going to do twice a week.
Okay.
And I said, oh, I'm going to do one every so often. I'll throw a third one.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do a fourth one. And then I just ran with 4 a week. And I did that. In 8 months, I got 100 podcasts put out.
Wow.
Wow, that's a lot of editing, a lot of time, a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things that on my podcast, I have 0 advertisements. And people are like, you're not making money on it? I'm like, that's not why I'm doing the podcast.
Yeah.
For me, it's different. For me, it's connections. It's me talking to you, Alex. This is a gift, right?
Yeah.
And thank you for being a gift, right?
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. But here's the thing. So for second season, I said, okay, I'm not going to do 4 a week. I'm going to do 2 a week. And I've been consistent. So now I'm in the 3rd season. And I'm going to continue that 2 times a week. And once I get to 50, I'll end the session. I mean, the season, then I'll start a new one. I may take a month off, but even though I take the month off, I've already recorded the whole season, right? So now I'm doing them live. So here's the cool thing, right? People can see us live, but you got to go to coaching call because you're going to listen to this later on when I actually do make it go live on audio. So that's the fun thing that I've realized that, hey, I'm doing a podcast twice. One is live and then one is recorded so that people who are, because people are going to consume your product in different ways. And you know this because you're doing a podcast as well. They're going to consume it maybe when they're driving, right? But you're not going to watch a video when you're driving. You might just watch it, whenever. You might even jump on a live one. Like hopefully we had somebody jump on. But the video will live on the live streams and you can also repurpose them and all that kind of stuff. So it's about hitting it over and over and over again and getting people to go, there's somebody who I want to follow because I know they're going to deliver great content. They're bringing great people. So that's why I'm addicted to this show, buddy. I got to tell you, I'm addicted to my own show.
I think if you're not, there's a problem.
Right. Because I'm having fun,
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, it's not the money, right?
Yeah.
At all, because I have no advertisers and people like, you're dumb. And I'm like, that's okay. Because I want to give people content that they don't have to fast forward through and maybe miss something that you
Yeah.
told us, Alex, on how to even get our book. Why not do it on my own, Alex? Why do I have to come to you? Why should I come to you?
If you are someone who, that's a great question. If you are someone who is starting out, you don't have funding, as in like, you don't really have, like, let's say you're the author who, you're just getting into authorship, but you're working overnight to deliver Amazon packages, right? Like you're probably not going to have the amount of money to pursue an aggressive strategy on Amazon,
Right.
to really be, to see the most success, which is, how the big guys do it.
Right.
So what I would recommend for you is we offer a free course. There's many people that offer free courses. We don't have a paid course because I want you to know that I literally put everything into that free course. There's nothing I'm holding back.
Wow.
I will teach you exactly how we do Amazon ads. So for someone like that, I would recommend you probably kind of try it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have 4 to 5 hours a week. That's probably what it'll take for you to start to get into your Amazon ads for your own book. I would recommend for that type of person, you should start to learn those ads yourself and start to see a little traction here and there. It's going to be a lot slower, but the risk for you, your whole thing is mitigating risk, right? You don't want to blow a ton of money on something that you can't see a return on. So I would recommend learning those ads themselves. Again, you don't have money, so instead you trade time. For someone who doesnto have time and they're able to hire it out, they have a business who, which makes, a lot of, there's more to gain than just readers of the book. Whether it's clients, people coming into your, into your community, then I would recommend that it's good to work with us. There's also authors, like we have some authors who make a lot of money on their books from their ads, but they've also written to market. They have good brands. When you're starting out, it just depends on where you're starting from and what you're trying to accomplish and whether or not you should work with us or not. So.
You just blew my mind. I had to put it down. I'm telling you, you're giving people, and you put a lot of effort, and you put your blood and sweat and tears and knowledge into this, and you're giving it away.
It's also on YouTube for free. I'm slowly putting them out because I was like, well, if the content's already in, and it's literally step by step what we do. There's like someone could literally replicate our business. The thing is I know no one will, and so it's
Right, but. So I put the link, your LinkedIn info, your Facebook. Is that how they'll find your content?
Yeah, on YouTube, it's just advanced Amazon ads. I'll share a link with you here too, Rafael.
That'd be awesome. I'm sure most people. So here it is, right? So let's say somebody says, you know what, I can't afford it. They take your course, right?
Yep.
They do your course, which is absolutely free, which is beyond believable. And thank you for doing that, right? Because there's so many people who maybe, you know what, they're strapped, right? And to me, right now, dude, you're an angel. You really are. So here's the whole thing, right? Did you put it up?
Not yet. I'm
Okay.
pulling it right now.
Yeah. Take your time. So let's say they start and they somehow get the idea, but now they start making some money on it, right? Once they do it, if they want to really do it, then once they get some cash, then they can come to you and start figuring it out. Would you say that that's a good way for someone to come along to maybe get started with your free course? And once they really, and like you said, like the big boys, because look, everyone wants something for nothing, right? Isn't that the truth?
Amen. Yeah.
But if you're trading, and you talked about it, you're trading your time. So you're not really doing it for nothing. You're doing it for your time. If you value your time, then you have to get someone like you, like Alex, to do it for you, because it's gonna take a long time, right? You have to, even if you go to the YouTube, you got to spend hours upon hours to learn this stuff. Once, and even if you kind of like the cliff notes, right? If you go through the cliff notes, you're gonna miss some stuff. So to me, and I'm recommending everyone, if they can start to afford it. But here's the thing: if you don't do the work, and if you think you can't afford it, then you're right. But if
Yeah.
you find a way to afford it, you know, somebody in your family may say, you know, I believe in you. I'm going to give you X amount of money.
Yeah.
That could be a way, but we don't know. We talked about asking, right? And this is how you and I met, right? We met at Ed Rush's event, right? Ed Rush is an amazing human being.
God bless him. Yeah.
Yeah, and we met at God Talks, right? And you were in the back table, and you were just like calm, collected, and he just said how awesome, and I know now how awesome you are. But and then I said, I got to go talk to Alex. And I introduced myself, and I did the thing that a lot of people are afraid to do, is ask. I said, Alex, would you be on my show? And you said, absolutely. And then we did the show, and
Yeah.
it didn't work out. But here we are again. And this one definitely worked out because we are live. The audio sounds great. And here's the funny thing: at the beginning, I didn't have my microphone on. You couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
We almost like, oh no, part two of no audio, but it worked out.
Yeah.
And here's the whole thing: it's, you have to ask. If you don't have the money now, you don't know who's out there who believes in you to give you the money, right?
Sure.
And the same thing, like even if somebody comes to for any type of coaching, right? Sometimes it's, you think you're getting something for nothing, but it's not, right? Because it's blood, sweat, and tears. We all have to put that in. And even when you get a coach, now let me ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
If I hired you, do I still have to do some work? Or
Oh
you're
yeah.
cool?
But
You're right.
it depends on where you're coming from. Majority of authors have something they need to fix, whether it's their pricing, whether it's their editorial reviews, whether it's the amount of reviews. Usually, it's the amount of reviews they need on their book. But oh yeah, we're gonna give you some homework because we know what it takes to be successful. So there's not everything we can do for you, and so we will give you a list of things you need to do if your book doesn't look up to par.
Mm. So there is, and we talked about it last time. Tell me, what clients is it that you take on, and you only take certain clients for certain things, projects that you do with them? They
Yeah.
have to have over 10,000 reviews, 10,000.
100, yeah, so 100 reviews, and then for your bestseller rank, you need to have a Kindle or paperback bestseller rank of under 100,000 to have a conversation. Then we'll happy to have a conversation, but it also can't be just like, oh, it's my launch day, and for a day it's under 100,000. Like, no, you need to prove that there's other things you're doing to
Right.
generate 2 to 3 sales a day, because otherwise Amazon ads are not going to be as easy to get started, and when they're not as easy to get started, it's going to waste your money. And so that is why we require, these certain things like at least 100 reviews and a bestseller rank. And then also we look for other things like, depending on the market, depending on the book cover, it's just a conversation we have. So, but I do have a weekly newsletter, this is usually where I point people, if if we can't work with you specifically, we have a weekly newsletter we send out every Wednesday, which is I took this from James Clear of Atomic Habits. He has a newsletter. It's a 3-2-1. We do a 3-2-1, but for books. So we send out 3 book marketing secrets, 2 links, and then 1, inspirational quote from an author to help you on your journey. So we send that out every Wednesday. And the goal with that is to get your book to a point where, you're able to, get some good sales traction and be able to start selling your book. So,
I'm floored by the amount of free stuff you're providing. I really am. And thank you, and you're guiding people on how to do it right. Not only do you have free content for them, you're even telling them what they need to do, and don't go hire somebody for probably 5 or 6,000 now, who tells you they're going to make you a bestseller, because guess what? Just pick a category and your mom buy a couple of books, or your
find the most obscure category on Amazon and have 20 of your friends buy your book, and you'll be an Amazon bestseller.
Right. That's it. Right. And so what is one of the things that somebody who wants to become an actual bestseller, not somebody who some obscure category, what are some of the things that must happen on launch day?
You need to have been planning said launch day for at least 6 months.
Not like tomorrow.
Yeah. And there's like a couple things you can do. If you have nothing, one of the main easiest things you can do is just pick a platform and start writing about, like, you can do this the day you're like, Rafael, if after this call, you're like, and maybe actually, I think you already do have a book in the works. I think you have like 100 books in the works from what I remember from a conversation last time.
Yeah.
The day you start thinking about and taking seriously that you are going to write and release a book is the day that you need to start picking a platform. It can be LinkedIn, it can be Facebook, it can be, Twitch, it can be Snapchat, whatever your favorite, platform is. Pick one. You don't need to do all of them. Pick one that works for you and just start talking about it to your friends, your family about, hey, I'm writing this book. Hey, today my goal is to write 1,000 words. At the end of that day, you say, okay, guess how many words I wrote today. People will chime in how many words you write. Like, get people involved from day one. And that is the bare minimum that you can start to do. If you have nothing else, pick a platform and start writing about your writing process. And that's going to help you lead up to that book launch. Obviously, my book's about book funnels and Amazon ads. Not really relevant to the majority of my high school, friends from high school who I'm friends with on Facebook, right? So, if your topic is something like self-help, well then, yeah, everyone that's relevant, to everyone who you're in front of. So, that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, at the very least, you can start doing that. Build a launch team, have 100 people, have them reach out to their favorite platforms and have them recommend you as a guest. Say, for the coaching call with Rafael, it's like, hey, I listened to your show. I think I sent an author your way as well. I was like, this guy's got an awesome book. I believe in him strongly, and he's someone who I think would be worth a conversation. It's like, and then if you're if a listener of your show is recommending someone, you're probably more likely to get on that show than if you pitch yourself, right? Because it's like demand driven, right? It's the same way with like, I think Honest Tea, they would go into grocery stores and ask the grocery store as like regular people, and they'd ask the grocery store like, oh, do you have any Honest Tea? And the grocery store would be like, well, no, what is that? And then they'd like look into buying Honest Tea because they was like creating the demand at these, at the grocery store level, right? So it's just a matter of, it start with what you have, and then, use a launch team. And then as you get closer to launch day, get people, give people advanced reader copies and have them write the review ahead of time. Because on day one, it's very hard to get people to write reviews, and having reviews early on is so important. And so have all those people ready to have them write the review in a Word doc. And then on launch day, say, hey, you've already written that review. Can you just copy and paste that into Amazon? So that way it takes the work off of it. And then after that, whenever someone reaches out and they're like, Rafael, I loved your book. I learned like it was the best martial arts introduction, beginner's guide I have ever read. And so then they, you say, that's great. What did you like about it? And then I'm like, okay, here's what I liked about it. Here's a sentence or two. You say, oh, that's really nice. Can you copy and paste that into a review on Amazon? Because if you just ask them like, oh, can you write me a review? Thanks for thinking the book is great. Can you write a review? They're not going to write it. So get them to do the work and then be like, oh, here's why you did the work. Can you copy and paste that into your review on Amazon? It frames it differently. So there's just a few things you can do leading up to your launch.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I love the honesty thing, because that's brilliant marketing right there, right? So I love the idea of making sure that you can start now. And so when we even think about if your book makes it to an actual bookstore, right? Because how hard is that?
Yeah, it depends. A lot of if you're self-published and your book is fulfilled by Amazon, unless
Not likely.
unless you're an overnight success, it's probably not going to sell a lot of copies in physical bookstores. Ingram Sparks is a platform you can use to get more visibility with those, but if no one knows who you are, they're not going to be ordering your book off Ingram Sparks. Ingram Sparks is just a way of basically validating the quality of those books so that bookstores will actually buy them. And then on top of that, Pat Flynn actually did this. I think he's like one of the only authors to make it into bookstores. And it's because he would have all his readers go to Barnes & Noble and request his book at Barnes & Noble. So Barnes & Noble actually started to stock his book because of that. So, that's one way to get creative. But usually if you're just self-publishing on Amazon, you're not going to have the access to traditional bookstores that someone like Ingram Sparks will have. So.
One of the saddest things is when you see a bookstore close, right?
I agree. Yeah.
And and unfortunately and fortunately, Amazon had a lot to do with that, right? But when we think about at your fingertips, right? Because now you have Prime, you can order a book, boom, you get it the next 2 days, right? It's not the same thing as going to a bookstore and feeling it, and like maybe even like standing there for 3 minutes and like glancing through it. Yes, this is the book I want. And that's such an amazing feeling to me personally.
Cool.
And some stores, even Barnes and Nobles, used to have cafes so that you can actually get a book, start reading it. I don't know how they did that with people just coming in, reading a book, putting it back down, and never buying it. And maybe that's why some bookstores close down, right? So when we think about publishing, when we think about writing a book, and you talked about how you would have loved to have read your grandpa's diary, if you will, right? Likewise here, because there is so much tradition that goes to the wayside because so many people didn't write. Maybe there's hearsay stories. What are your thoughts on you writing a book? I'm putting this in your head now. About your grandfather, about the funny stories, right? So, and you can name it whatever, like my grandpa's diary, but things that you remember, maybe even investigating. And this is something that everybody can do, even if you don't publish it. But now you can go and talk to all of your relatives and say, hey, let's talk about Aunt Mary, or how she was so peculiar, or this or that, the other. And then we can start to maybe categorize it where we have a book for our family. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think being able to pass that down through time would be awesome. I know some people will interview their grandparents while they're still alive and write their book.
That would be the best time. So let me ask you: did I just put that idea in your head? You're gonna do it?
Maybe, yeah. Who knows? That and the million other ideas I have floating up that somehow need to get done at some point in my life. But.
So let me ask you a question: how difficult is it for you personally to work with so many different amazing authors and say, man, I got to do that. I got to do that. I got to do that.
Every day I come up with ideas for, I plan on dying having written a book that sells hundreds of thousands of copies at a minimum. That is an absolute plan of mine. So
nice.
Yeah.
Alex,
you start to see how they do it and you're like, wait a second, I could do this. Like, okay, you start to learn that. And that's what I love about maybe that's why I'm doing this whole business to begin with, is I just get to learn about, okay, how to actually write a book that sells well.
Yeah, because you're talking to the people who are
Right.
in those books, who are creating that, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: don't you feel somewhat a little bit like on cloud nine when you know that it's because of your knowledge that you're helping them get their book out there?
Oh yeah, I've started to have people. I'll have like a sales call with people, and even if they don't buy Amazon ads
Right.
from us, they'll say, "Can we hop on another call and I'll pay you $100?" This happened like 2 weeks ago, and it happened again this week too. I'm starting to get people who are offering to just pay me for my time,
Mm.
and that's a really cool thing. You know, like, hey, I'll pay you $100 an hour if you just consult with me about books for an hour. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, what? What did you say? Like, I was giving this, like, I'll hop on my sales calls, and even my sales calls, I usually get off them, and authors will be like, oh my goodness, I just learned so much. And I think that's also why we're so successful with, our sales calls, is we have authors who are like, wait a second, I just got value from this guy while he was selling me. And, I don't have to pay him a cent. Like, clearly this is someone I want to work with.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really cool part of it. Yeah.
So, Alex, how does somebody find you if they actually have a book and they're ready to go forward? How do they have that sales call with you?
Yeah, so we don't. We only set up. We can't have sales calls with everyone, just because of time. But shoot us an email. My email is alex@advancedamazonads.com, or visit our website is advancedamazonads.com, and I'll ask you what your goal is for your book. I'll see where you currently are. Maybe we'll add you into our email list that you can start getting some of those tips to start propelling your author career forward. And then when I think you're ready, where I think you're getting towards a point where it would make sense to work with us, we'll set up a phone call. So
Awesome. Just type that in the thing so I could put it up
yeah.
for them. His and that's one of the most important things that you talked about. We don't have time for everybody, right? So, but here's the thing: you're giving everybody the opportunity to get to know what you have available for them, right? How important is it for everyone to think about, let's see, the concept of reaching out, finding out if they're ready to do that, which is write a book. Now, let me ask you, and I'm sorry I'm rambling on, but it just came to me. Instead of them saying, "Oh, I'm going to write a book, let me call Alex," they should have the book like ready to launch, after launch. When should they reach out to you?
It depends. If you're someone like Mike Michalowicz, you could let us know, 2 months before you're releasing your book.
Mhm.
If your book's going to sell well, we can start the research process early. You've got the author brand where we know that the Amazon ads are going to be worth your time. But yeah, if you're someone who is, navigating your own experience, then it would just be a matter of getting to 100 reviews and then getting to a point where you're consistently selling 2 to 3 copies a day. And then it's probably worth the conversation. So,
Yeah. So plan for it, right? Be
yeah.
ready.
Yeah, be ready and yeah, have a plan to get reviews and figure out how you're going to start selling a few copies a day. Yeah.
One of the things that Amazon will not let you do is put 1,000 reviews by yourself, right? You have to actually have different people.
Yeah, and they'll actually, even like, if you're friends with like your mom on Facebook and your mom posts a review, Amazon will remove that review. They have like algorithms that web scrape and basically look for personal relationships that they'll end up removing reviews from if they're not authentic. So yeah, there's not really a way to game the system per se.
Mm. So let me ask you something, and it's this is probably legal, but can people buy reviews?
No, it is illegal to it's literally illegal with the FTC to buy reviews. There are platforms like review swapping sites like
Mm.
Puppy.co where you can review other people's books, and they'll get reviewed. Amazon might block them at some point, but somehow they've been around for a few years, and I guess they don't violate Amazon's terms of service. But when it comes to, yeah, you can't, like, I can't tell you unless, yeah, I'm allowed to give you a free copy and say, hey, leave a review however you'd like. But I can't even say, hey, here's a copy, leave me a good review, or else that's not allowed. So
Awesome, awesome.
yeah.
My gosh, you've not only taught me, but you've inspired me. Yes, I have so many books in my head. I've written diaries. I have all these things, but I haven't actually said, okay, this is this book. This I've actually have tons of titles to some of my books, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't really said, okay, this book is finished. I haven't done that. And you know what? My time is not now. But when it comes, I know I'm reaching out to you and ask you for your advice. And
Happy to help any way I can,
I
Rafael.
know you.
Friends get free advice. So.
No, listen, the thing is, and I've learned this, right? When I get free advice, people, or even when you give free advice, people don't take you seriously. So
That's
one
good
of the
too.
things I've heard 1,000 times over and over and over again, and it's so true, is when you pay for it, you pay attention
Yeah.
and
That's
you
a really
do
good point.
the work that's required. Right? So, yeah. Alex, my gosh, thank you again for doing it second time. Man, I really appreciate you. Alex, thank you again, my friend. You have an amazing and blessed day.
Yeah, Rafael, you have such a gift for getting to have such intentional conversations. So always love talking with you, and I really appreciate you having me back. So
Yeah. You know what? And we're going to stay connected for sure.
yeah, sounds good.
All right. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
You too, Rafael.